Are there some things that you can't write jokes about?
Well, I wasn't necessarily going to ask that, but you can answer that if you want.
The answer is no.
Before we get started with our episode, we're going to hear from our sponsors. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage, to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the, did we just hit $1 million stage? Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Rebecca. All lowercase letters. Go to shopify.com/Rebecca to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/Rebecca. So, how's your sock drawer looking? You know what? Scratch that. I don't even want to know. What I do know is it's probably time for a spring cleaning and refresh. Bombas just dropped a bunch of really soft new socks, tees, and undergarments to help you get your drawers a little bit more organized while also doing a little bit of good. Head over to bombas.com/Rebecca and use code Rebecca for 20% off on your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/Rebecca and use code Rebecca at checkout. Now let's get started with this week's episodes. Ben, you're the first person to have returned on the podcast. How do you feel about that?
I would say I feel good about it if both times weren't just because somebody else didn't show up.
No, but that's not correct. That's not correct at all.
Is it not?
No, the first time we had this planned. We were going to do something in Baltimore.
I thought there was a bunch of people that dropped out and you're like, Ben, can you do this?
No, in Baltimore, you were planned. You were not an accident.
Oh, that's what it was. I was an accident, but the Baltimore, I almost slept through it. That's what it was.
Yeah, you forgot and you didn't show up. And I had to call your girlfriend at the time and I was like, hey, can you wake him up, please? We gotta be there soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, don't do me like that. No, today was hey, some people canceled and I just want to make sure I have an episode. I need you to show up at this time. But it's okay. So for those who don't know,
I'm so reliable.
No. You are. If I really need something, you'll come. I'm doing air quotes for people who can't see you. Complain about it, but you'll drop what you're doing. You'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I just don't think you deserve good things.
He's such a liar. Do you see it in his eyes? You can see the lies glistening in his eyes. I am Ben Brainard's favorite human alive. Anyways, for those who have been here from the beginning of podcast era, Ben was already here talking about military things, but most people know Ben as the States guy, Florida man, Ben Brainard, that one guy that keeps getting up on a stage and saying funny things as a comedian.
Yep, the one guy.
That one guy.
There's no other male comedians who keep getting on stage.
And I keep thinking back, and our original episode was on military, and I was talking to Avery last night. I was like, yeah, me and Ben are going to do a thing on comedy. And he goes, why didn't you do that in the first place? And I said,
yeah,
I don't know. That's a great question.
Well, at first you didn't even want to do the military thing. You were like, let's do an Uber episode. And I was like, I barely drove Uber like that.
Well, how many content creators am I going to find that drove Uber?
Most. Probably.
Really?
Probably,
I am not. Who?
I don't ask.
Yeah, I don't know anybody.
Have you asked everybody?
I've asked, what have been your odd jobs? And no one has.
Nobody's going to say Uber.
Why?
Because that's not an odd job. That's a job that people who are poor work.
But, I've asked for odd jobs and people are like, oh, yeah, I delivered pizzas.
Well, that's because it's I deliver pizza for Papa John's and also for a food truck, in Orlando. And I've had some weird experiences doing that. And so if you were like, what are some odd jobs? I would be like, yeah, I've got some weird stuff that happened here. But if you were to ask me, what are some odd jobs I've had? I was an audio technical engineer for a church. I was a Sunday school teacher.
You went to church?
Yeah, for a little bit.
Did you burn?
No.
Oh.
I was a Sunday school teacher. I drove a bus for the YMCA. I was a child care counselor for the YMCA.
People trusted you with children.
They didn't know I was there. I was a referee for a summer for U13 women's recreational soccer 6v6 league.
Say that 5 times fast.
I can't because I forget the words I just said.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I had to drink my water.
Yeah,
Well, anyways.
no, none. If you were odd dropped, Uber would be so far
You know
down
what?
the list.
Okay, that's fair. Well, now you're a comedian.
Yeah.
And you travel the world. You're now a world traveling comedian now, technically.
I am a comedian who has been outside of America.
Yeah, but that's the world.
Yeah, I haven't performed outside of America.
Didn't you
though.
perform in Australia?
No, I was just there. I saw a couple shows.
Oh, for some reason I thought you were also performing.
No,
That's my
I was
bad.
just there for vacation.
Oh, well, maybe you're not as impressive as I thought.
Good.
So you're now a nationally known comedian. Wow, that sounds so important. When did you decide that you wanted to do comedy? Like, how did you decide, like, you know what? I don't need to be an engineer. Didn't you go to aeronautical?
Yeah, Embry-Riddle
college?
Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach,
how'd you
Florida.
decide, I don't need that. I'm going to make people ha-ha.
I got bored.
That's like most of your life.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this because I got bored.
Undiagnosed ADHD.
Yeah.
So I was living in Daytona Beach at the time, and while I was going to Riddle, I saw a sign for improv comedy night every Tuesday night at this place called the Cinematique. And it was a troupe called Random Acts of Insanity. And I went, I saw the show, and it was fun. And I went back like a couple weeks later, saw the show again. And after the show, I just asked one of the guys, I was like, hey, how do I get involved in something like this? And it was Daytona Beach, so they didn't really have like rules. They were just kind of like, yeah, show up on Tuesday an hour early. And I was like, that's it? And they're like, yeah, that's it. And so I came, and we just we rehearsed for the show just in the alley next to the theater. It's the most Daytona Beach thing. But it was just like, you know, the rehearsals for an improv show are very much just like playing games, playing other improv games just to get your brain in that rhythm. And so I did that with them for a little bit. And the leader of the troupe, I don't know if that's the proper term for it. The guy that runs the troupe, Andrew Ramos, he was like, there's this YouTube series. There's like a 13-part series about like Wayne Brady teaches improv, and it's on YouTube for free, and you should go watch that. So I did that, and I came back, and I think I did improv on and off with them for like 2 years. And then I dropped out of college, and I was planning on going active duty military at the time. And so I'd moved in with my aunt in Orlando while I was waiting for the paperwork to go through. And while I was there, I saw a sign for comedy night at a place called the Drunken Monkey Coffee Bar. And I went to that, and it was an open mic stand-up night. And I watched people do open mic comedy for the first time. And I guess there were enough people that were bad enough that I was like, I think I could do that. And so I asked the person running, I was like, hey, how do I get involved in something like this? And he gave me a website with like the full list and all the details of every open mic in Orlando. And I think I just went and watched 4 or 5 of them before I signed up for my first one. And the first one I signed up for was at a place called The Other Bar in downtown Orlando. It's no longer called that. I forget what it's called now. But I signed up, and when I signed up, the host, Ken Miller, he was like, the sign-ups work like this. You come this week, you sign up, that means you get to go up next week. You're welcome to stick around, but you won't be going up tonight. So I stuck around, and apparently several people who had signed up didn't show up that week. So at like 11:30 at night on a Monday in a mostly empty bar, Ken was like, hey, you still want to go up? And I was like, yep. And I got up and I did 5 minutes and I don't remember any of it. It was so bad. But somebody who was there, and they were a comedian from, they were an American comedian that was living in Japan, and they just happened to be back for whatever. And he was talking to me after I got off, and he said the phrase, if you didn't tell me that was your first time, I wouldn't have known. And I was like, well, I'm going to ride that for a while now. So that's what made me want to go out and do another one. And I was really bad for a while. Every comic is.
What would you consider like bad? Like what makes you bad?
People don't laugh.
Okay, so you weren't funny, heard.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nobody is funny their first time. And if they say they are, they're lying to you.
I feel like, do you think like confidence on the stage plays a big part of that?
Confidence is important, but it's not so much like you don't necessarily have to exude confidence. You have to be confident in whoever you are.
Okay.
Because there are people like Aparna Nancherla. She's a famous comedian, professional comedian. Her stage presence is not like one that exudes confidence,
Right.
but she's confident in the character that she is, in
Right.
the person
Right,
that she
right.
is. She's very quiet and timid on stage, but that's just a part of her.
That's the
act.
bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I had some stage presence. I had more than somebody who hadn't done 2 years of improv, but it's such a different thing. Like
Right.
with improv, you can rely more on the other members of the troupe that are in that game with you.
Right.
And a lot of times with improv, what if you say something that isn't funny, that's part of the funny. Like it's so quick that you can like hide behind that in a way.
Right.
Whereas stand-up, it's just you.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's scary. That's so scary.
Public speaking is the number one fear in the world.
Yeah.
You get over it. I think my timeline, I think I went out every single night for a full month doing 5 minutes of material at open mics every single night for a month before I wrote one joke that people chuckled at.
Oh, that's so devastating.
And it wasn't like before that people were like, this sucks. It was just like I would get polite smiles, which isn't as bad as people pretending that you're not even on stage. Or the worst one, people just getting up and leaving.
Oh no.
I've seen a lot of that happen.
So like what do you do when you like what did you do when you would tell jokes and people just didn't laugh? Like
at open mics, it's a little bit different because that's kind of just like that's our practice.
Right.
Okay. So sometimes at an open mic, if people don't laugh at a joke, you just kind of like, well, and then move on to the next one. During shows, if like a joke doesn't go well, if you acknowledge it, people will tend to laugh at that.
At the fact that you messed up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe not messed up, but maybe more so like that joke just didn't hit with this crowd.
Okay.
I've had jokes, especially in Florida, where it's like the violent swings between how one crowd feels versus a different crowd feels. That is, you can hit both extremes of the entire political spectrum between like a 30-minute drive in Florida. And so when I started in Florida, like I've done shows for college kids and I've done shows for like crusty old bikers who still smoke indoors. And everything in between. Uh-huh. So sometimes you write a joke that's like, these college kids are going to eat
Love
this up.
This.
The crusty old bikers
They're
are
not
going
gonna like
to not care about it at all.
Okay. So it's
So
like knowing your audience.
knowing your audience is big, but it's also kind of like acknowledging that sometimes jokes just don't work for certain crowds, and sometimes they just don't work on certain nights. A lot of times you can't even control that. But acknowledging it, telling the joke and be like, well, that didn't go well, people tend to laugh at that, and you can kind of just like, you humanize yourself with the crowd. The stage and the microphone kind of like separate you from them, but saying something like that makes them go, oh, he's just a guy. He's just one of us,
Right.
And that helps.
Okay, so you did open mics every night for a month or two.
Yep.
Then what was your next step?
More open mics. There's a general timeline in comedy, and it doesn't have to be followed.
Okay.
But this is generally how it goes, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So after about 8 months to a year, you start getting your paid hosting gigs.
Okay.
After about 3 years, you start getting your paid feature gigs. And after about 7 years, you start getting your paid headliner gigs.
Okay.
Something along there. They say at about 5 years in, is when you really find your voice. But so that's just the general timeline. The time between open mics and hosting, 8 months to a year, it may take that long for you to build 10 minutes of funny material. But in the between, you do these mics, you write jokes the best you can, right? But as soon as you have like 5, 7, maybe 10 minutes of material that's like good enough, you can start doing local showcases. And local showcases are just, they're at a restaurant. They're on an off night in the side stage of the main club, and that'll be like 7 to 10 comics doing 7 to 10 minutes each. And that's kind of where you get to test out, like, oh, now let's see what this material does in front of a crowd that paid to be here,
Right.
or a crowd that like actually wanted to come see comedy and not just we invaded
Right.
their space on a Tuesday. My friend Marcus Crespo says that open mic nights make comedians feel like horny Vikings. Something because it's just like, hey, you're having a great night in your little bar on a Tuesday night with your friends, right? Little did you know, in about 10 minutes, 27 comedians are going to kick down that front door, set up a sound system, and just talk over you. You didn't ask them to be here, and you can't tell them to leave.
That makes sense.
Marcus is a gem.
I love that. So, like, how do you go about writing a set? Because, like, I think a lot of like people who don't know anything about comedy, they think that you just wing it all on stage, but you like write out an entire set.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Well, I mean, it differs person to person.
Okay.
Right. I'm gonna take this cap off so it stops
That's fine.
jingling into the microphone.
That's okay.
It differs person to person, and I think if you're someone that wants to start doing stand-up comedy in any way, you have to find your way. I have friends that they're very regimented. Like, they'll wake up in the morning and they'll just write for an hour
Oh.
about whatever they can think of. And then sometimes, every so often, they go through that, whatever they've written in that hour, and be like, oh, that's a funny thought. Let me see if I can expound on that. I have a very... I do a lot of stories, and
right.
most of my stories are about me and my personal life. So a lot of the way that I write jokes is I just think about some random silly stuff that happened in my life, and I just try to find the funny in that. Sometimes I'll be like just telling a story to a friend, just as you do, and if they laugh, there's something in the back of my head that goes, okay, that might have legs on stage. The biggest difference is, like, if you tell a friend, they understand the context of like who
Yeah.
you are, and the crowd doesn't.
Right.
So it's telling a you had to be there joke in front of a bunch of people that weren't there, but making them feel like they were.
Okay. Okay.
I tend to write a lot of my punchlines just randomly.
Okay.
Like, if I'm busy doing something that, takes up some of my brain activity, the rest of my brain will just be thinking about whatever. And if I think of a good punchline, then I'll pull out my phone. It happens a lot while I'm driving. I'll pull out my phone, open the voice recorder, and just start yelling the story into the phone. And then I'll listen to it later when I get home, and I'll be like, okay, that was good. I can take that part out. There's a lot of, especially when it comes to storytelling, there's a lot of finding out which parts of the story actually need to be said and which parts don't in order to get to the punchline the quickest.
We're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsors. 10 seconds on the clock. How many things can you name that are always growing? Your relationships, your skills, your customer base. How about businesses on Shopify? Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage, to the first real life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit $1 million stage? Shopify's there to help you grow. What I love about Shopify is no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify's there to give you the tools that you need to take control and take your business wherever you want it to go. Because businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Rebecca. All lowercase letters. Go to shopify.com/Rebecca to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/Rebecca. So, how's your sock drawer looking? You know what? Scratch that. I don't even want to know. What I do know is it's probably time for a spring cleaning and refresh. Bombas just dropped a bunch of really soft new socks, tees, and undergarments to help you get your drawers a little bit more organized while also doing a little bit of good. If you didn't know, Bombas has a one purchase, one donated mission. So anytime you buy socks, tees, undergarments, anything, you're also donating essential clothing to someone facing homelessness. Bombas also has an 100% happiness guarantee. What I love about Bombas is how buttery soft the fabric is. Comfort is very important to me, okay? I like to be cozy. So get comfy this spring and give back with Bombas. Head over to bombas.com/Rebecca and use code Rebecca for 20% off on your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/Rebecca and use code Rebecca at checkout. Now, back to the episode.
What do you think about I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. Like, do you think for both you and other comedians that all of your stories have to be 100% true? Or do you think exaggerating or like fibbing a little bit every now and then is okay?
They don't have to be 100% true.
Okay. Are yours 100% true?
All of my stories, like the main meat and potatoes, are true.
Okay.
I exaggerate here or there a little bit. I think the most common sort of exaggeration is like you'll change the dialogue of someone else, and not necessarily to be like, this is what they should have said, but it's because like that situation wasn't meant to be funny. Like when it happened in real life, nobody talks like that. Just they weren't trying to be funny like this, but the idea of what they said stays the same.
Right.
I've just changed the words around to make it funnier in that moment.
Do you think other comedians tell stories that like just blatantly aren't true?
Yeah.
Oh, what do you think about that?
They can do that if they want to.
Okay. I'm sure like some people would like hate it. Like some people get very passionate about those things. I just wasn't sure if like you cared or not.
Yeah. I've tried to care less.
Okay.
I think in the beginning it was a lot of, and one of those things I learned from watching older comics is that some of those older comics were also jaded older comics, and they had a lot of strong opinions about things that really don't matter.
Okay.
And so in the beginning, I was like, yeah, sure, that's stupid. Why are you doing that? But now I'm like, hey, man, if you're going to go and do that and then people are going to laugh and have a good time, great.
Whatever. Yeah.
The thing is, if you're telling a story that isn't true to you, if you just made up this story, one, anybody else in the world can also tell that joke.
Yeah.
And two, you're not going to tell that joke with the same conviction as somebody recounting a real story. So if you go and watch a showcase and there's 5 comics on the show and 4 of them tell observational jokes.
Right.
And then one of them tells a story about something that happened to them last week, and it's a little bit heavy, or it's a little bit heartfelt, something like that.
Right.
There's only one comedian that you're going to remember from that night a week later, and it's not going to be the guy who told a joke about traffic lights. It's going to be the person who told you a real thing. So this is one thing that I've said since I started doing like sketches on TikTok and stuff. A lot of people, I don't want to say a lot of people, but I've been tagged in several videos, more so towards the beginning, where people were like more or less ripping off my style.
Right.
But I don't want to say that because the idea itself wasn't that crazy, dressing up as the states and talking about the news. That's not an idea that only I could possibly have, right?
Right.
But people started recognizing me as that guy. So whenever other people did something similar, I'd get tagged in it. And I would just always say the same thing. They can if they want to.
Yeah.
Because what they're going to find out is this is not easy. And you guys are going to come back to me. And I know you will. Because that guy just did a bunch of weird stereotype jokes that he Googled. And I did a lot of research. And nobody wants to do that. And I don't blame them. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to get mad at that guy because you're not going to stick around.
No.
He's already wasted all of his potential doing all of the stereotypical jokes that he could think of.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what do you think about, like, and this is something that like even you made content on, and this was something that was a really hot button issue not that long ago. And I guess it'll be like a 2-part question. What are your thoughts on like dark humor? And some people really love dark humor, and for other people, it's just not for them. What do you think is like the good like boundary in the line when it comes to dark humor?
I'll answer the question you want to ask.
No, I'm gonna get to that one after.
No. The question you want to ask is, are there some things that you can't write jokes about?
Well, I wasn't necessarily gonna ask that, but you can answer that if you want.
The answer is no.
Okay.
There is nothing that exists that you cannot write jokes about.
Okay.
As the audience, you can choose to not laugh at things.
Okay.
But nothing is off limits when it comes to joke writing.
Okay.
I will say this, though.
Okay.
If you choose to write jokes about something that you know is heavy or touchy in any way, you better write.
A good joke.
I mean, I just say you better write. But yeah, that's the
better
implication. Yeah. If you're gonna write a joke about abortion, you better write a good joke.
Oh, I was thinking of the DV jokes.
Oh yeah, no,
that's,
that too.
That's what I had in my brain when I was
Sure.
asking about it. I hear like
Beth
again,
Stelling has an hour called Girl Daddy. It's on HBO Max.
Uh-huh.
She talks about.
Oh.
It's very funny.
Interesting. Well, so I'm obviously not a comedian, even though I know you think I'm so funny.
Mm-hmm.
But so I've always like especially when all the DV jokes and stand up were like a really big hot button issue a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people were explaining that in their opinion that the funniest part of dark humor is the experience that goes with it. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, maybe I don't necessarily. I don't know if I agree with that wording, but if you're gonna get on stage and do jokes about domestic violence, never having been a victim of it, you're not gonna write jokes that people can relate to. You're
Agreed.
not gonna be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
So it's not so. I don't know if necessarily like. The funniest part about it is that, but
I guess more like they worded it as the funniest part, but I think it's the reality is it's more the relatability.
Yeah,
the relatability of dark humor comes from the experience.
And the other thing is like if you're gonna talk about a touchy subject, you kind of have to be correct.
Yeah,
you have to be to some degree. You have to be correct in what you're saying about it. Or else it's just not going to work. I mean, go watch Christopher Titus.
Okay.
Christopher Titus is hilarious. And most of his comedy is about how messed up his family is.
Right.
And it's bad. But he's got hours of material about the worst possible things that you could think of. And it's so funny.
Have you met Cody Green?
Not yet. He said he's going to come to my show
He's
in
very
Michigan,
sweet.
though.
I did an episode with him not that long ago, or a few months ago, and he's been dabbling in stand-up. And he said that he obviously, like a lot of his comedy surrounds the fact that he has schizophrenia, and that he would have people come up to him at the end of shows and just berate him of, that's not funny. You can't joke about that. There are people out there that have schizophrenia. And he's like, yeah, me.
Yep.
Like, what do you...
Yeah.
Have you ever had someone that, like, confronted you about something that you joked about and they're like, that's not funny?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure that I've had people say something like that, but I just respond with, to you. They go, that's not funny, to you. Other people are laughing, though. So
you don't worry about those people. I
yeah.
mean, you know.
If they if they come with a very specific type of energy, then I will be mean to them.
You're mean to everybody.
I'm not mean to everybody. I've been in therapy for 3 years. One of the things that I like to say, if somebody like genuine, like, because you can tell when somebody is like, hey, I just didn't find that funny versus that's not funny.
Give me your manager.
Right. And so like to people like that, I'll be like, do you want me to explain it to you? And they don't expect that. And it hurts them. And it should.
Have you said that to someone before?
Yeah.
Can you record it the next time? I just need to see their face.
I mean,
that would bring me so much joy.
You want me to stop? You want this person to come up to me at a meet and greet and be like, that wasn't funny? And you're like, hold on a second. Let me grab my phone, turn on the camera and be like,
can you repeat that?
Do you want me to explain it to you?
Yes, that's exactly what I want you to do. That would make it even funnier.
I'm not going to do that.
That's so unfortunate. That's really a missed opportunity.
That feels like filming myself feeding the homeless.
No, I don't agree with that at all. Because you're not exploiting people down on their luck. You're exploiting people who are making the deliberate choice to be a jerk.
Okay.
I don't agree.
I'm not going to do it.
You can blur out their faces.
I'm not going to do it. I mean, I would blur out their faces if I were to film it, but I'm not going to film it.
Well, I don't mean to post it. I mean just for, like, my amusement.
No.
That's so lame. That's so rude. Anyways, how do you go about, like, okay, so you decided you're a comedian. You've done open mics. You're like, I'm a funny person. I could make money doing this. How do you start making money doing it?
People book you.
Right. But how do you get that to happen? So, like, if people were listening to this were like, I want to be a comedian one day, Ben is going to explain to me how this works because I don't know.
Yeah. So if they wanted to be a comedian one day, what they should do is start doing open mics.
Yeah, we've established that, yes.
Usually the way that it starts is somebody who runs a show in the local scene who has seen you perform at open mics and has decided that you would not ruin his show. And I say his because statistically speaking.
Yeah, most comedians are guys. Yeah.
And that's not because women aren't funny. I have a whole thing about that.
Okay, I want to get to that then.
Yeah,
remind me because I will forget.
So usually what happens is you go to open mics and somebody in the scene who runs a show is going to see you do an open mic and go, oh, he's funny enough. And they will be like, hey, do you want to do this show? Or vice versa, you know this person runs a show and you know you just had a great set and they were there. And you can ask them like, hey, can I be on your show? The thing with that is it's still hard. Rejection is hard. And it's also hard to give rejection. So if someone who's your friend that you've hung out with a bunch in the scene, but maybe isn't funny enough to be on the show, you can't be like, not yet. You know, it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
So just try to find a way to ask in a way that doesn't make them feel that bad about it. But usually that's how it begins. Somebody asks you if you want to be on their show, and then they'll pay you like $20 or whatever like that.
$20?
Yeah. So the general pay rate for comedians hasn't changed since like Rodney Dangerfield.
So it's like teachers. Cool.
Yeah, teachers make more.
Well, I understand, but the idea that teachers' salary hasn't increased since God knows when.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about that.
Yeah.
Usually in California it's about double what it is in Florida, but in Florida you'll make like $25 to $50 for hosting, $75 to feature, and $150 to headline.
Okay.
Until you get to a point where you're selling tickets. But if people are just coming because it's the comedy club and not because of you, you're going to get $150 for the show.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
After that, the first time I got like a paid hosting gig at a club was because I knew the guy that was headlining that weekend, and he just asked me if I wanted to host. And I was like, sure. So I went with him that weekend and I hosted and they paid me. It was 3 shows. It was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and it was 3 shows. And I think I got like I don't know, $150 for that whole 3-day stretch. And I was like, I'm living. I was like, this is the most money I've ever made doing anything. Absolutely, I'm coming back, you know? And I did well enough that the club was like, hey, we don't have a whole lot of like regulars that we can rely on. Would you like to come back like once a month and do a weekend? And I was like, yeah. I mean, a consistent $150. It was an hour away, so I had to drive an hour to do 20 minutes. Yeah, it was, and that's kind of how that started. But once you're in that zone where people in the scene know that, hey, you're getting paid to do this now, they feel more comfortable getting booking you on their local shows. Usually there's also like a major club in the area. They call that the home club. So like the Orlando Improv was my home club. And like the next big step was like, oh, if you can get a hosting gig on an off night at the Orlando Improv, like that's crazy, you know? And so that was always cool. And trying to get, you know, more stuff at the Orlando Improv, trying to leave your city to find gigs, which I did a lot. I would go 1 weekend every month. 1 week every month. I would try to go to a different city somewhere and just hit some mics, meet some people, make some friends. And the next time I came back to that city, I'd be able to hit those people up and be like, hey, I'm coming through again. And they'd be like, great, I have this show. It pays this much, you know? And so I expanded my range that way. There's a little trick you can do with a lot of with some comedy clubs where, like, you know, you put together a little road trip, and maybe say there's a couple comedy clubs on that road trip that you haven't been to yet. Mm-hmm. So you email them and you say, hey, I'm so and so. I'm going to be driving through the area on this day. Is it possible to get a guest spot or a feature audition while I'm there? Guest spot's like 5 to 7 minutes. Even if you're really bad, you're not ruining the show in 5 to 7 minutes, right? And of course, that email you also include like any references you have or like a link to a YouTube video showing that you're not the worst. And most clubs don't feel like they're not going to ruin anything by saying yes to a 5 to 7 minute spot. So they are more inclined. You've given them an exact date. So they don't have to spend any time like trying to look at calendars or anything. You've given them an exact date and you've said, I only want to do like 5 to 7 minutes. Most clubs, as long as they have the opportunity to, they're going to say, yeah, sure, come on through. And this isn't going to be your A clubs. So like an A club is like the Orlando Improv or anything where like famous people come through.
Yeah.
Those clubs are going to be more strict about it. But there's a lot of B clubs where it's like there's, you know, this is mostly just a restaurant with a stage, you know, and they get a lot of local guys or like regionally touring guys, but people you generally haven't really heard of.
Right.
They are going to be like, sure, come on through. And so I've gotten into several clubs when I was first starting out just by doing 5 to 7 minutes on like a Thursday or Friday night, doing well. And then the manager was there and was like, hey, you're really good. Send me your avails. And so now suddenly I have a growing list of clubs I can email, and then I can go and do 20 or 30 minutes and get paid $75 and a meal per show. So like some clubs, they'll have like 5 shows in a weekend, you know, 75 times 5. That's suddenly now you're making what's that? $375 for a weekend, and you're like, this is, and then free food while you're there because they're also a restaurant. So you're like, yeah, that's nice. This is worth sleeping in my car.
I've never slept in my car before. I'm a princess. I'm a princess.
You got to find a rest area with like a truck stop with nighttime security.
Oh, that's so scary.
Roll down the windows just a crack so you can get air in. Yeah.
Oh, that's so scary.
I did that for off and on for probably like a year whenever I wasn't home.
Avery almost slept in his car one time in his life because and he'll never do it again. It scared the crap out of him. So I was coming back from VidCon Baltimore.
Okay.
So I was flying back from Baltimore, and my flight, I don't know if I told you about this. It was actually pretty hysterical. My flight got delayed. Like, we were on the airplane, and they're like, sorry, guys, we can't go anywhere right now. And we're like, why? it took hours to get all of this out of them. But pretty much what happened was the flight before us, same plane, different flight, the pilot and the co-pilot got in a fight. And they were trying to determine, the airline was trying to determine if they required the recording from the cockpit in order to deal with said altercation. But the problem was, because the pilots were unionized, they had to go through all the channels to check whether or not they could actually take this recording or not. And so we just had to sit there. This flight was already supposed to go at 7 p.m., 8 p.m.
Yeah.
This was now, we finally got the full story around 11 p.m. midnight. And
so
then
4 hours later?
we just sat on the plane. We were sitting on the plane for hours. And we were going to my brother-in-law's wedding. So it wasn't even like at my house. I was flying to Charlotte, which is 2 hours from where we live. My husband was staying with his dad, who lives an hour from the Charlotte airport.
Yeah.
So he was like, well, I don't want to go all the way back to my dad's house just to have to turn around and come back. And, you know, we had to be we were both in the wedding, so we had to be there early in the morning. And he's like, well, maybe I'll just find a rest stop nearby and, like, try to nap until you actually get here.
Rookie mistake, Avery. He's too tall for that. He's too tall for that.
He is, because he's 6'3". And I get whatever place he found, like, he started to settle in, and he got all comfy. And literally my press-on nail just came off. As he started to fall asleep, he heard glass breaking. And he looked around, and there were people, like, getting into a physical altercation, and there was screaming, and then he heard bang, bang! And he goes, that was fireworks. Yeah, that was fireworks.
If he could still hear...
He's from Salisbury, Ben.
I'm talking if they were just like a couple cars away.
No. It was like somewhere in the parking lot.
It was a ways.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was somewhere in the parking lot, and he was like, nope.
Good call.
Nope. And he's like, he like peeked out to see if anyone would see him sit up, and he like waited. He's like, all right. Yeah, and he just like slowly, and as soon as he turned the car on, he out of there as quick as he possibly could.
Good for you,
Bless
Avery.
his heart. But we ended up not landing in Charlotte. So what they ended up doing on the flight is around 1 a.m. No. Around 12:30, they decided we have to keep the plane here. We're just gonna put you guys on a different plane. So we're gonna deboard and go to the gate over and put you on another plane. So they deboarded us. All of us like sitting around there were literally contemplating whether we just like rent a giant van and I'll like pitch in $50 and just drive from
I mean, Charlotte isn't that far away.
It was from Atlanta. So like it went from Baltimore, Atlanta, Charlotte.
So were you guys in Atlanta or were you in Baltimore?
We were in Atlanta. Yeah.
Oh, that's drivable.
Yeah, so we were like all genuinely considering just getting a big caravan and just driving. But we ended up landing in Charlotte around 2:30 in the morning. And then we had to drive the hour to his dad's house. The groom was still awake. They were all still awake. And then I had to get up 4 hours later to go be a bridesmaid.
Yeah, I don't think you told me any of that.
Yeah, it was a hectic weekend.
I wish they just played the audio from the fight on the plane.
That would have been so funny.
Yeah, and just
Like,
take votes on like, do we think that this is okay?
I have no idea. It's so funny because at first they were trying to like play it off that it was passengers. No. It was the pilots. But anyways, yeah, so we don't sleep in our cars because we're not trained professionals.
You don't sleep in your cars because you made the mistake of listening to outside.
Yeah.
Whoops.
No. You open your windows. How do you not?
Just a little crack.
Well, anyways, okay, continue. Sorry, I rambled a little bit. Continue on with, all right, sleep in your car, drive an hour, make $300 in a weekend.
Yeah. At that point, like, there's a lot that goes into it as far as, like, trying to email clubs and get
Right.
dates. And everybody has different methods for
Right.
that. And it's the worst part of comedy. The business side of comedy is the worst part of comedy.
Right.
Because you don't get to just show up and do jokes and then leave. You have to be a professional business person as well. So there's a lot of like sending an email to a club with all of the list of like all the dates that you have available, and then they won't respond. So you have to send another email a few weeks later, and then another email a few weeks later, and then another email a few weeks later, and then maybe one day they'll respond and be like, "Hey, this date we can do." And now you just kind of have to build around that. Once you get to the point where people are like buying tickets to see you, it becomes a lot easier because now you're making money for the club, and the club will be like, "Yep, we'd love to have you." But most people don't get to that spot.
Okay.
There's a lot of hard work, sure, and there's a lot of talent, sure, but there's also like a good bit of luck that goes into that as well. So those are a lot of that stuff. It's stuff that I can talk about on end right now, but if I'm talking to people who have never done comedy before, they shouldn't be thinking about this.
Okay.
They
Why?
should, because if you start thinking about like, what are your emails to bookers gonna look like, then, buddy, you got to think about how to write a 5 minutes that's funny first.
Yeah. That makes sense.
If you don't have a tight 5, what are you even gonna send to the club?
Yeah.
They need a video to see that you can be funny for 5 minutes, but you don't have a funny 5 minutes yet. So don't even think about the booker yet. One step at a time. Find the open mics. Get funny.
Okay. I want to talk about the women comedians.
Yeah. So there's a lot to this.
Okay, I'm ready. We got like 20 minutes. Yeah.
So comedy is a male-dominated field,
Yes.
and it's not because women aren't funny.
Heard.
So here, from the beginning point here is women that try stand-up comedy more often than men leave stand-up comedy or quit stand-up comedy
Okay.
because men are trash.
Heard. You said it, not me.
And I'll say it again. I mean, you gotta think about like most open mics are gonna be at like a bar at like 9-10 o'clock at night. So it's late. It's not in like a safe environment necessarily. You're not with a bunch of your girlfriends. You show up, and because of the way of the world, it's you and like 15 dudes that you barely know, all at a bar on a Tuesday night at 9 p.m. And it's that every night. And a lot of comics, regardless of gender or whatever, are broken people.
Yeah.
They're a lot sad, lonely, whatever. So you mix all of that together. You got a bunch of drunk men who are sad and lonely at a bar on a Tuesday night, and you're the only girl around. That happens a lot.
Yeah.
And so most women quit because it's unsafe, or they literally did have a moment.
They were attacked,
they were
yeah.
attacked. So there's very few women in comedy because of that. But that also perpetuates the myth of women not being funny, because what ends up happening because of that is there's so few women in the scene that when local bookers put on showcases, most of the time it's just men because it's mostly men. And this is going to be talking more about like smaller areas. Like this is coming from my experience in like Orlando, where for every like 100 male comedians, there were 10 female comedians, and there were maybe 110 comedians in Orlando.
Right.
So you run a local showcase and you have 5 to 7 people on, and it's 5 or 6 of them are men, and then every so often you have a woman on. When people who come to that show regularly start to notice that it's mostly men, sometimes you get people going, "Hey, why don't you book lady comics?" And the booker can't just be like, "Oh, there aren't any." There are. Sure there are. But the reality of it is, statistically, women in comedy get opportunities faster than men in comedy because there are fewer of them.
Yeah.
Like if you're a man in comedy, you have to be funnier than 90 dudes to get on that spot. Whereas if you're a woman, you just have to be funnier than like 2 or 3 other people to get that spot. It's not fair to anybody involved because now that you're on a showcase, you don't get to mess around.
Right.
You have to be funny. Right? It's going to look very bad for you if you show up to this professional book showcase and you make people groan. So women are forced to, one, stop working on their new material quicker so that they can just focus on the stuff that is funny. So they don't get to expand on anything like that as much as men do. And then 2, they're forced to just much quicker do the stuff they know is funny. Mm-hmm. And when you're just starting out in comedy, a lot of the stuff that is funny, that you find that to be funny, is like sex jokes, whatever. It's just crude, it's sex stuff, whatever. So they are just kind of like stumbling through the process of learning comedy. They find the sex stuff, it hits, and now they're forced to be on showcases all the time where they can only do the stuff that they know is funny, which is the sex stuff. You know, so they don't have the time to work on the other material behind that. They don't have the time to develop and learn beyond that. They just have to go, this is it, boom, now we have to do this. And so because of that whole situation where, you know, women are forced into opportunities, I don't want to say get opportunity, but forced into opportunities sooner than men, they have to rely on much lower level comedy. And that's how that perpetuates, because now you have women at the highest levels who comparatively aren't as advanced as some of their, you know, male coworkers. And this isn't a one-size-fits-all thing. This is generally speaking. But the reason that we have the idea that women aren't funny, 1, misogyny, sure. 2, it's because we force women to do that. Like we
Right.
force women who aren't ready to be in a showcase to be in a showcase because men have scared off all of the other women.
Yeah. And they're just so happy to have like, oh, we have women. See, yeah, but
Yeah.
they're not ready.
And if you're just a person trying stand-up comedy and in a month, you know, someone's like, "Hey, do you want to be in my showcase?" You're like, "Yeah. Absolutely."
And because you don't know.
You don't know
any better.
Yeah. So it's a loop. It's a cycle that we've just forced ourselves into, because that speaks into both tropes of women aren't funny and also women only talk about sex.
Oh,
We've forced them to do those things by, you know, not
So
respecting
unfortunate.
boundaries.
I hate that so much.
Yeah.
Are there any other misconceptions that you think are out there about like stand-up comedy or the comedy sphere in general or anything like that?
I don't know. I mean, most of my life over the past 10 years has been inside the comedy sphere, this comedy scene. So I don't even know what conceptions people have outside of it at this point.
That makes sense.
One of them, I know people think that sometimes we just get up there and wing it every night. I'm not bringing in a brand new hour of material every single night. That's insane. No, we write all of it.
Do you ever take like your written down stuff up on stage with you?
Yeah.
All the time or just
No.
every now and then?
The only thing that I bring up on stage every night is my phone because of a voice recorder. I bring a notebook, but partially because I'm working on a new hour right now, so I'm trying to get like all of the organizational of it. But then at the end of the show, when I do like my plugs, like, hey, meet and greet so-and-so, I have the list of things that I need to say during that. Okay. It's not a long list, but it's just not a thing that I think about, so I have that there. But I've definitely done shows where I've brought a notebook up on stage and I've sat there with it going, all right, here's one. And then I told a joke. And if people laughed, I would put a check mark. And if they didn't, I would just
Cross it out.
scratch it off, which makes people laugh. You know, that in and of itself is a thing that can work. But yeah, there's that where people are like, oh, you can't bring a list up because that's unprofessional. No one cares. If having that list there is going to mean you're going to
be more confident.
more confident, but 2, you're going to be more organized and you're not going to forget whatever, bring the list. Nobody in the audience is going to be like, oh, he has a list? Ugh, never mind. I don't think he's
leave.
funny anymore.
Let me leave.
Yeah.
All right. Well, are there any last minute thoughts or anything else that you want people to know about the comedy world or stand-up comedy?
I mean, if someone's listening that wants to try stand-up comedy, I think one of the things that I was mentioned a lot but never really like how to, finding the open mics in your comedy scene. Facebook.
Oh.
Yeah, a lot of places you can just Google or you can just look on Facebook, like in Orlando, you have the Orlando comedy scene on Facebook. There it is.
So simple.
Yep.
I feel like when it comes to a lot of those things, like people overthink it so often. It's like, no. The answer's right here. It's very simple. Don't stress yourself out.
If
you're making it
you're
hard on yourself.
If you're a new comic, don't give advice to people.
Yeah.
Don't do it. There's something. Don't try not to give tags to people that you don't know personally yet. If an older comic decides to take a moment out of his day to give you some advice, listen. Just because they're still in this city doesn't mean they're bad at comedy. Some of the funniest people I know still live in Orlando because they have a family and a job that they like, so they don't care enough to leave. But I'd put them up against anybody.
I love that.
I think that's I'm sure I'm gonna have 1,000 things to say as soon as we stop recording.
That makes
But-
sense. That makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Not that you had a choice.
I had a choice.
Did you?
But my choice was either be here or watch you stress more. And if I chose that one, then you would have called me a bunch and you would have complained about it.
So he cared. He was worried about me, and he chose to come here because he cares.
Whatever you got to tell yourself to sleep at night.
Oh, I already know. I know. I'm just reminding you that I know. You don't have to convince me.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and hope to see y'all next week. Bye, my lovelies. Good format. I just kind of wing it.
I'm from Maryland.
Are you really?
Yeah? Where?
Do you have Old Bay with you right now?
I think I have some at home.
But it's not on your person.
Not on my person.
Oh,
No.
you're not allowed
She
back
doesn't-
there.
From Baltimore.
What's wrong with my phone?
I don't
Fix it.
What?
I moved here, so.
Wait.
Yeah, if you could do actually just a silent version of the Narwhal song. Do you know the state sport of Maryland is jousting? Now you do.
Have you ever participated in jousting? We're going to brunch.
What kind of brunch?
I don't know yet.
An LA brunch or a real one?
I don't know. She hasn't picked yet. Is there a difference?
Yes.
I don't live
You
here.
live in North Carolina. You should know the difference.
But I don't go to brunch here, so I don't know how brunch here is different.
Neon signs.
Why would there be neon signs?
Because it's not brunch.
Oh. Michaela says you're wrong.
Okay. I need you to know before you finish this. I am from the South, and we brunch
We love brunch.
different. It's not like brunch to us is not like let's go out with the girls and drink mimosas at whatever. Brunch to us is let's fry up 12 pounds of potatoes
No,
in
that's
butter.
brunch. That's brunch.
To me,
To women in the South, that's brunch.
I'm talking like actual brunch, not the hangout. Like if I go to a brunch place and I spend more than $10 and I don't need to take a nap
You're a
afterward,
guy. There's different kinds of brunch.
I know there's the right way.
No.
Listen, if I walk into a brunch place and there's a neon sign, I know the food's not going to be good, and I'm not about it.
No, the food's going to be good and healthy.
Healthy is not a part of
It
brunch.
is. It is such a part of brunch. Michaela, he does not know. He does not understand.
What have you done to brunch? Brunch is supposed to clog your arteries
We
and make you take a
beautified
3-hour
it.
nap.
Brunch is for the girls. Yeah. Cranberry mimosas are my favorite. Yeah. You want a little Bellini? Yeah.
God, this hurts my soul. Look, listen. Here's the
No,
deal.
we're gonna do a video on this later.
I don't care that you guys do that. That sounds fun. I'm very happy that you get to dress up cute and go have margs with the girls. I just don't like that it's called brunch. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what bothers me. I need that sentence because like as a man, if I just make fun of a thing that is traditionally feminine, people are like, "Oh, a misogynist." No, I'm not. I just
No.
have a very traditional belief of what brunch is. And that's it.
I like my version of brunch.
You're allowed to. Just
Yeah.
please find a new name. I don't.
It's brunch with the girl.
Because if I get invited to another brunch and I show up and there's not a 12 stack high of pancakes on the table, I'm gonna be very upset.
So you need when you get invited to brunch, you say, "Is this brunch or is this brunch with the girls?"